One of my favorite statistics about our impact is early on, I remember in year one, I ran a survey with our community and I asked them, I wanted to know, have we helped people make more money? Like, have we actually had impact? And I put it in our stories and I asked people, first question, like, have you made more money after watching our content because of our content? Not because of other factors. Several people said yes. And then I asked them, okay, what were you making before and what are you making now? And I calculated the difference and I put it all together. Data analyst, I love the numbers. And the number was, I forget the exact amount, but it was well over $1 million.
Welcome to the Hot Start VC podcast, the show where we break down how celebrities and creators build billion-dollar brands. Today I'm joined by Hannah Williams, the founder of Salary Transparency Street, the viral street interview platform on a mission to normalize pay transparency. Hannah scaled SDS to over 3 million followers and ultimately sold the company in a 7-figure acquisition to now this. In this episode, we unpack why salary transparency mattered so much to her, how she turned street interviews into a media business, what the acquisition process looked like, and what is next for the brand. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Hannah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, so you built Salary Transparency Street by interviewing people on the street about their salaries for the last 4 years. You grew a following over 3 million people, and you recently sold the company for a 7-figure amount. But let's go back to the start. Why was salary transparency so important for you to begin with?
Yeah, so very simple. Actually, I found out that I was underpaid myself. So back in the day, this was 2021, I was a senior data analyst supporting a government contract, and I found out that I was underpaid about $25,000 compared to other people doing the exact same thing. And it was just because of a lack of transparency, that I didn't know what was out there. I hadn't learned how to negotiate or know my worth in college. And I just realized, this is a system that is very broken, that needs a lot of information, and we're not seeing any change from, the higher ups. We're not seeing companies make changes. So maybe if I bring people together and I make everybody realize that this information is helpful, we can cause change ourselves. And so that was really the motivating factor and then the goal.
And you solved it obviously by doing street interviews, but was that immediately like the initial business idea that you had, or did you also think about other formats or other business ideas to actually tackle the problem of pay transparency?
That's a good question. So I had actually not created hardly any content before starting Salary Transparent Street, but I had started kind of dabbling and doing my own content about how I became a data analyst, and that gave me a little bit of courage to start STS and get a sense of how to create content. But I had done a video where it was like my, just talking to the camera and a sound, like some voiceover. And I did how much I made in every job I've had, because that was like my first taste of transparency and feeling like, okay, if I found out that I was underpaid and I never imagined I could make this much, maybe other people need that information too. So that was my first trial of any content related to transparency. And keep in mind, I was not even a celebrity at that point, quote unquote celebrity. I had no followers, and that video went viral. It had over 1 million views. And I was like, wow, okay, this is not only a problem, but clearly people are interested in getting information like this. But I was like, okay, I can only talk about myself for so long. I need to bring other people into it. And I had seen people had started doing street interviews. They weren't as popular back in 2022 as they are now, but I was seeing that was kind of the theme and where people were going. And so I remember just watching other channels and trying to look at their mic and being like, what microphone are they using? How are they filming this? And I felt like that was the best way to incorporate strangers, get the most amount of data out there that I could get. And, it's easy to go up to people very quickly on the street like that versus trying to set it up and do a podcast. I was like, this seems like the easiest format to get the most amount of people and data.
Yeah, very interesting. And how is that interview format also evolved? What is it right now?
I look back at our first videos and I cringe so much, Scott. It's so hard to watch, but it has evolved, and it's crazy to see it from day one to day now. When we first started, you can even go back and see our videos. It was very direct. What do you do? how much do you make? And I think it was because I was very scared and I just had not, gotten comfortable with those questions yet. So it was very much like, okay, I have 2 questions for you. I'm terrified to ask you, like, let's just do it. And then I think I asked them, like, what's your dream job? And now I'm so much more comfortable talking to strangers that I can have a full-blown conversation with them that's very calm, very casual, and I get way more information. So it's not just what do you do and how much do you make. I try to get the backstory, like what's their educational background, how long have they been doing it, what industry are they in, career advice. It has definitely evolved to include way more questions and a lot more depth.
And also like content format wise, because like if you only have 2 questions, that is really good obviously for short form content, versus if you really want to get into the long form story about why they do what they do or what is their dream job, what is their motivation, it becomes obviously a different type of content fees for a different platform. So how are you also thinking about content format per platform?
Yeah, that is such a good question because that's exactly what we're trying to figure out how to break into YouTube for now. So now that we've really like nailed short form, we know kind of what the theme looks like, what the structure, what the format, all of that. How do we apply that now to YouTube? And so our goal now with this team, since we've been acquired, having way better editors, way better camera equipment, I'm hoping that we can take it to the next step and really do, that let's go a step further. Let's get into their backstory. Let's get way better content. Let's go a little bit longer than 60 seconds. And that's where we're hoping to go now.
And yeah, you mentioned that with your first video, you immediately went viral. I think like after the first video, you got like 50K followers. 2 weeks later, you already had 400K followers. Why do you think that the content resonated so well instantly?
I think timing was a big part of it. I know some people had created content here and there asking people how much they made, but no channel had been created yet whose sole purpose was to ask people how much they make, and in a repeatable daily format where you know exactly what you're going to get whenever you follow. And so I really think that the timing was that crucial bit of it, that we were the first to do it. And I get a lot of hate for that because people are like, you own asking people how much they make. It's like, I'm not saying that, but I was the first to create a street interview channel out of it, and it has, inspired a lot of similar channels today. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the more transparency that's out there, the better, but there is something to be said about being the first to do it, and that being the reason for why we're so successful versus other channels that start similarly today. I'm sure they'll experience some success, but will you achieve the exact same success that we've had? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like I literally was just on holiday with friends that I've been friends with for the last 15 years. And some people are very transparent about their salary, and some people I have no idea, and they also don't want to say anything about their salary. Why do you think there's so much stigma around the topic of salaries in general?
I love this question. I think it's very personal. I think we have yet as a society to remove the personal aspect from our pay. And I think that a lot of us internalize our pay and think that however much we make reflects something about us. I've talked to so many people, and one of the things that makes me always sad that I hear on the street is when I ask people, can I interview you? A frequent response I get is, I don't make enough. Like, I don't think it's worth your time for me to even share with you. It's not going to help anybody. And I'm like, actually, you're who I really want to talk to, because I think we need to expose the low pay. Like, everybody can make 6 figures, 7 figures, and there's always a little bit of a, is that true? But no one questions if it's true about how low somebody makes. And I think that there's just shame that people internalize that shouldn't exist. What we make says absolutely nothing about who we are, our value to society, or what we bring to our daily lives. Pay is determined by company and economy. It's not determined by our personality or our values or who we are. So I think it's really, a lot of people are feeling shame about how much they make, and that can be for low earners and high earners as well. There's people who have family dynamics. Another common thing I hear is, I don't want my family to see how much I make. And that's always interesting to me because I'm like, what's going on here? But like I said, it's incredibly personal, and I think everybody has their reasons for wanting to be transparent or not wanting to be transparent. But ultimately, I hope that we realize that when we have the opportunity to uplift someone, especially in a similar career path, that's where transparency matters the most. If you talk to somebody in a completely different career path and find out how much they make and you have no interest in that career path, then it's very high level. It's more of a calm conversation. But if there's a lot at stake, that's when people, I think, get nervous. And so always proceed cautiously in those conversations, give people grace, and don't take it personally yourself either.
I love that, and especially in the niche of business owners, because as a starting entrepreneur, you don't make any money and you can barely pay yourself. And then 3 years later, when you have a little bit of success or you hire your first person or whatsoever, the outside world immediately thinks that you can buy like a Ferrari and you can buy like a nice first class plane ticket or whatsoever. But people obviously don't know what's behind the numbers or whatsoever. And also different business models, right? Like for me, everything in my business is focused on building equity positions, whereas I have friends who chose to be drop shippers, and for them it's about cash flow, it's about making as much money as you can right now, but there's not much equity value down the road. So I think it's also very interesting just in the niche of business owners to be more transparent about what is the short-term and also long-term business model of yourself.
Absolutely. And the more we talk about it, the more everybody can learn from one another. But that really plays into, if we don't talk about it, there's that secrecy, and it allows people to make more mistakes instead of learning from our own mistakes.
And when you started this, did you always think that you could eventually turn this into a full-time job and even a business that you could eventually sell, or was that not on the roadmap at all?
I think when I started it, it was really just a passion project. I knew that I wanted to have impact. I wanted to help people. I was not thinking that this was something that was going to replace my full-time job at the time. I was like, this is going to be a nice, fun little side hustle that I can do on weekends, and that did not happen. Like we mentioned, our first video went massively viral, and within the first week I think we posted the video on Saturday, and so the following week, I was DMs from major media organizations that wanted to interview me. I started having conversations with companies like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. They were like, this is huge. Like, we would love to work with you and get in early. And as soon as I started talking to brands within those first 2 to 3 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm dumb if I can't monetize this. Like, there's clearly a business opportunity. And I think that was really inspiring for me because I knew that I wanted to do something that was a passion project that I felt good about, that I knew had impact. But no, a lot of people know that you can't monetize things like that. A lot of times the passion projects are just not monetizable. So it shocked me in the best way to see that there was a very immediate response to it. And ultimately, it was not my goal to quit my job, but I did end up quitting my job 3 weeks after our first video. I remember when I quit, my manager was like, if this TikTok thing doesn't work out, like, you can come back. We'll take you back. And I was like, I'll let you know, like, we'll see what happens. And my husband followed me a couple weeks later. We had about a 6-month emergency fund stacked up, and I think we ran out of all of it, and we got our first payment from a brand deal like right at that 6 months. So we cut it very close, but we were able to monetize pretty quickly, and it ended up all being worth it.
That's crazy. I don't think I've ever met a creator who literally within 3 weeks of posting their first video, actually ended their career to focus on it full time. Have you heard a similar story? Or?
No, and I don't recommend it. And I do want to stress to anybody listening that is an outlier situation. I almost feel bad sometimes talking about it because I don't want other similar creators to feel like they're behind or they're doing something wrong. They're not. My story is truly the example of luck and timing. Like I mentioned, being the first channel to really establish this niche helped us so much. It really skyrocketed our growth. But for most creators, 99% of them, you're gonna have to put in several months, if not several years of work to establish yourself and then take that leap of faith. But, having those conversations with brands and figuring out how you can partner with them definitely helps speed up the process.
Yeah, obviously you're very open about your own salary and about the business model of SDS as well. So can you actually break that down for us? Like, how do you make money as a company?
We make money, 97% of our revenue comes directly from brand partnerships. So partnerships with Capital One Cafe, companies like Indeed, Glassdoor. And those partnerships are robust. They're usually months long. They're not just like a one video, one and done. They're multiple videos, multiple different different deliverables. And this is where I think it's really important to have not just a channel, but to have additional factors like a newsletter, have a website, because those are all things you can upsell. Not only was I able to sell a video on my channel, I was able to sell a podcast ad and a newsletter ad and an ad on my website. So that's a way to increase the amount that you take home each month. And especially those long-term partnerships, make sure that you've got consistent revenue coming in. But 96-97% from brand partnerships. The other 3% comes from ad revenue, like, YouTube views, TikTok creator fund. We make no money from products. We don't sell any merch. We don't sell any courses, any digital products, nothing like that. Yeah, that's where all our revenue comes from. And like you mentioned, once you start making money, people think that you are now rich. And I remember we made our first $1 million in gross revenue, and I think we profited 600,000, I believe, in our first full year, which was phenomenal. But I remember we reported it and my family was like, oh, okay, so vacation's on you next time. And it was these conversations that I had to have with my friends and my family that, just because the business made that much doesn't mean that I made that much. I'm on salary. And I believe when we started the business, we didn't have, a team and many expenses. So my salary was set at, I believe, 150 to 200,000, maybe 250 at the highest. But once we started hiring people and our expenses went up, my salary went down to 150K to make room for that. I was happy with it, and to this day I still make 150K now since we've been acquired.
Yeah, very interesting. And I love that story because what I see is that many creators, they build a following. And I think you're different because you actually build a business. You have built different pillars. You have built a salary database. You have built resource platform. You've built a website. You built a newsletter. And you've built real assets that eventually could be acquired. And so many creators, they just create content and they cannot replace themselves or whatsoever. And you have actually built a platform that is not solely reliant on you, that can actually outlive you. So how have you actually decided to build what type of products or what type of resources in that process to thinking about, hey, this is actually an acquirable asset?
Yeah, I think my biggest tip here when it comes to building something that hopefully will acquire is to think long term and not to think short term or, how quickly can I make, $10,000 a month from this thing. I've made $0 from our salary database. Like I think we do Google ads. So I make like $10 a month, which is nothing. But, it's not something that I immediately saw as something that I could charge other people for. I tried to think of what is missing right now in the job search process. Like, what else can fill a gap instead of recreating something that already exists? I feel like that is not always successful because, if something already exists, sure, it can be acquired, but really the strength is something that is missing, that fills the gap. And in my experience, finding out I was underpaid, when I would go to sites like Indeed and Glassdoor and I would look up how much does a data analyst make in my area, I would get an average. I would get an aggregated result. I wouldn't get a specific amount based on my years of experience, my education, all these things that were really important. So I figured the salary database is something that fills in that gap. Now people can share their salaries and look it up directly, and it's individually searchable, not an aggregated result. So I also was asking myself, do I charge people for this? Like, what kind of a product am I creating? And I could see another creator in a similar shoes charging for it, and I think that's totally fine. But personally for me, I didn't feel good about charging for it. I felt like this is information that should be easily accessible to all. I made no money off of it. I think I spent about $300,000 coding it from scratch with a team and building this beautiful product. But for me, I don't feel bad about it because I know that it's acquirable. And actually, part of our deal with Now This is that they didn't want our technology. They only wanted our content and our brand name. And I was okay with that because I was like, okay, you can go buy that. I'm going to keep building this, and I know that this is acquirable in the future as well. So I have a double acquisition here potentially on my hands. And I think that, focusing on filling the gap and creating something that people find a lot of use for instead of monetizing another product has helped us build a really strong product that I hope will get us to acquisition sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I love that you actually walk through the decision of monetizing your own business model, right? Because there's other creators, take someone like a Miss Excel who is teaching people about Excel, and she actually has her own digital products or whatsoever. But for her, it makes much more sense to actually monetize that in the short term than for you. You're actually building a movement, a platform, and the more eyeballs, the more people are on your platform, the more the value is of your platform, obviously. And it's very interesting that now this is actually not interested about that. So is that also in the future going to be somewhat of your focus, building like out this platform, building out the tech component, building out a digital product that you can eventually exit as well?
Absolutely. So I'm actually very excited about having kind of two jobs now where I'm a supervising producer at Now This, and I really get to wear the creative hat that I wasn't able to wear running the business. But now I still get to apply myself in that business building aspect of building out this tool that I love and just value so dearly, and where I can't tell you what we're doing now because I think it's such a good idea, and it's another one of those things that hasn't been done yet that I think is really going to change the way that we apply to jobs. But we're building something in the background with a team that I hired in Canada, and I'm so excited about what the future holds there.
Super exciting. And yeah, as you mentioned, STS was recently acquired by Now This. So Kate, tell us more about what makes them the right partner for this acquisition, and why did you actually decide to sell?
Yeah, so I feel like some people might look at this and be like, I thought she said she would never sell. And that's true. In prior interviews early on, we had been asked, is this something that you would sell? Are you interested in, getting investment or anything? And I was very, very dead set on I would never sell STS. STS is my baby. Like, there's no right partner for this. Like, we're going to do this all by ourselves. And around year 3 was when I realized this is a lot of work. Like, building a business, not just creating content day to day, but having this robust map for, a system for how STS works. It was a lot. And I also started to recognize my strengths as a founder and as a creator and my weaknesses. And, putting ego aside, I recognized, I love the creative side. I love brainstorming. I love coming up with content. I love executing the content. I don't like editing the content, which is what I'd been doing for the last 4 years. I don't love sales calls. I don't love the negotiation with brands. And I'd been doing that for the last 4 years. And so there was a lot of conflicting energy where there was a lot of movement propelling us forward, but I felt like I was almost holding us back from achieving these things because I was burning out. And I know some people would say, well, just hire a team. And I had tried to hire, but it's very difficult to hire in the creator economy. You have to look for something very specific. I just been burned a lot, and I think I was a little tired of trying to find the right people. So ultimately, we had conversations with a few media brands who were interested in acquiring us, but it never went anywhere because I was very dead set in our values that we would not partner or sell to any media company that did not align with our values. If they didn't understand that what we're doing is a mission to change a broken system and help people make more money and workers, worker empowerment, if they did not align on that and they just saw views and like engagement and followers, that was not our partner. But Now This came along and they gave us everything we were hoping for. They gave us the perfect pitch. Not only were they aligned in our values and hoping that they could continue to push that mission forward, they had this robust ecosystem to support our existing business. And so it wasn't a conversation that happened overnight. This took several months of back and forth, and this doesn't work, this works, let's negotiate this. The first deal that we talked about was not the deal that we signed. And I'm proud of myself for doing what I tell our followers to do, is to advocate for your worth and don't take less than that. And I did that for ourselves, me and my husband and our business. And ultimately, we ended up selling early January. And so my husband and I moved over into new roles. So we're still running STS. A lot of people are like, what's next? Like, are you leaving STS? Like, what happens next? And what I love most is that nothing's changing. It's only getting better. I'm still host. I'm now supervising producer. So I'm helping run everything in the background, making it happen. James, my husband, is still our cameraman. We just have an excellent team of editors now to make the content way better. And like we mentioned earlier, take it to YouTube as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there are so many different components to such a deal, obviously, and you kind of really need to date before you can get married with like your post-acquisition partner to figure out if your values align. So it's actually a good thing that it took you such a long time. Have you ever considered, instead of actually going with a team that actually has all the assets and the infrastructure, have you thought about potentially raising capital as well and build that own team and infrastructure for yourself?
I did think about it, and I had some conversations, transparently, no pun intended, with some VCs and investor groups, and they were not giving me enough money, honestly. Like, I was definitely open to entertain it, but they were not talking money. So I knew our worth. I knew we were well worth 7 figures, like into the 7 figures, because I knew how much we've made. And I was like, if I can make us as a business $1.6 million while wearing all the hats and kind of putting 50% of my energy into it, I know that a dedicated team can double that. And so they weren't talking the right numbers, so it didn't happen.
Yeah, I just also think because the asset class is so new, like so many people have such a hard time valuing creators and their income stream and thinking about what is actually what they can build long term. And that's why I'm so excited about funds like Slow Ventures. And obviously I'm very biased about my own fund, Hot Start VC, that are dedicated to only investing in brands founded by creators or investing in creator holding companies and really providing them with 7-figure checks to build out the whole platforms.
That is so smart, and you're really doing the right thing getting in early, because that was my issue. Was all the companies I spoke with didn't understand short form creators. Like I know a lot of them I talked to were like, yeah, but how do you do on YouTube? And I was like, well, YouTube's not really like our thing. Like, we are on YouTube, but like, don't look at those numbers. Like, look at TikTok and Instagram. And they were like, yeah, but you don't make like any money on Instagram. I'm like, I know, it's a totally different world. And so there was just so early. I think that was a big part of it. And that's only going to last for so long. So like I said, you're perfect. You're in the right place now, being in there early.
Yeah. And you mentioned obviously that you built this company together with your husband. What has it been like working together with your husband, creating this company from scratch?
Honestly, I think it's been a blessing and a dream. We work so well together. We were both government contractors before this, and I'm just so grateful that he listens to my crazy delusional ideas and is like, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And that is a very special person to have in your corner and on your team. And I think it's really a testament to why we've gotten so far, is because I could have puttered out and burned out so much earlier, but I had such a good partner. And if there's anyone listening who is also thinking about working with their significant other or family member, I think my biggest piece of advice is it's not gonna work if you are the same person. You have to understand what role you play, and it's important to respect those roles and trust the person in those roles. James, my husband, knows that I'm the business girl. Like, I can talk to the brands. I can, make this happen. I'm the creative. I can come up with the idea. But my husband is the executor. He can make the vision a reality. He'll tell me, you're standing in the wrong area. Let's stand over there. Oh, can you turn over here? Like, that is his realm. And he's also the technical person. He knows how the cameras work and I don't. So it's worked really well because I think we complement each other so well, and we respect what our strengths and weaknesses are, and we just work together to, take it full circle.
Yeah, it's the dream, right? Being able to work with your partner in such a way, and eventually also now post-acquisition work together in different roles within a larger company. So yeah, truly massive congratulations on that end.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, so let's talk about the impact also of SDS. Do you have any insights in the numbers of people that were able to negotiate higher salaries or make better career decisions or whatsoever?
Absolutely. One of my favorite statistics about our impact is early on, I remember in year 1, I ran a survey with our community, and I asked them, I wanted to know, have we helped people make more money? Like, have we actually had impact? And I put it in our stories, and I asked people, first question, like, have you made more money after watching our content because of our content? Not because of other factors. Several people said yes. And then I asked them, okay, what were you making before and what are you making now? And I calculated the difference and I put it all together. Data analyst, I love the numbers. And the number was, I forget the exact amount, but it was well over $1 million in total for the amount that our community had made. And what's even more remarkable about that is we all know surveys, some people answer them, a lot of people don't. We had about, I want to say 50 to 100 people of our million following answer that survey, and it was over $1 million. So that alone for me, I was like, okay, that is just a fraction then of what we know we've helped people make. So I can confidently say that our content has helped collectively workers make millions of dollars more in their careers. And that is just the pride of my life. But not only that, I'm very proud of our legislative impact. I was invited to testify in support of 3 pay transparency bills in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. And they all passed after the testimony. So I know that, we were able to influence that and help it get over the finish line. And that legislation is helping people have more transparency by law, not just by content. So not only have we helped people directly, but we've changed the system, and that was our goal. So I just hope that in the next few years we can help pass more bills. We can hopefully help influence international transparency. There's huge movement happening in the UK, the EU, and Canada. So this isn't just, an American thing. This is worldwide. And I feel like it's only starting. We're just getting started.
Yeah, it's so cool to kind of see the power shift going from like corporations to now individuals, that like individuals like yourself, they can pick up a camera and can now all of a sudden have an influence on the law. So that is so exciting to see. Were there any personal stories from the community that really touched you that you can potentially share?
I mean, there's so many. And I've talked to so many people on the street who don't want to do an interview, but want to talk to me and share, that they watch the content and it has helped them in X way. The ones that really stand out to me are mothers who have told me that, they were able to get back into the workforce after watching their kids and not knowing what to do next, not knowing, what opportunities were out there for them. I think what I love really is not just showing people, okay, you can make more in this career path, but also what's out there. We had very basic career exploration courses as a kid where it's like, okay, you can either be a police officer, a nurse, or a lawyer, and it's interesting to have people go out there and say, yeah, I'm a cocktail server and I make $100,000, or I'm a hot dog stand vendor and I make $80,000. It's these careers that you never thought you could make a decent living from. And I love that it gives people these opportunities that they just had never considered before. One that's coming to mind as well, not just with career impact, but society impact and impacts with family and how people move about their daily lives and talk to people. But one that really sticks out to me is there was a girl that we ran into very early on in the channel, and she saw us interviewing and she came up to me and she was like, I'm not doing an interview, but I want to let you know I love your channel. And I'm going to therapy right now to talk to my therapist about why I'm scared to talk about money, like why this freaks me out. And I was like, okay, hope it goes well. I'll see you. And I figured I'd never talk to her again. And she sent me a DM later that day. And she was like, hey, I'm that girl that I saw that you talked to on the street. I just wanted to let you know, I'm working with my therapist now about my money trauma. Thank you for inspiring me to take that step. And that just sticks with me because I think it's really important to challenge the trauma that corporations have taught us to have, and that there's nothing wrong with knowing how much people make or talking about it. It only empowers us. It gives us the power back from corporations so that we can call the shots, and that's how it should be. I just think there's so many stories like that, and each one of them makes me a little emotional.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I love the examples you mentioned about the hot dog stand or whatsoever, because society is actually forcing you need to climb the corporate ladder, you need to study, you need to get degrees, you need to work in sales, in tech or whatsoever. And then they actually find out that if they are working as a plumber or working as a supermarket manager, they can actually earn 2 or 3 times as much as they can actually do in their corporate career. And I see that with a lot of my friends right now. They're towards the end of their 20s, starting early 30s, and they're now figuring out what is next because they kind of feel stuck in this corporate ladder and they feel that they can't kind of level up. and they love working with their hands, for example, but society told them working with your hands is not what you should do, you should study and blah, blah, blah. And now they figure out working with their hands can make them 3 times as much. So I really love those examples.
Absolutely. And especially working with your hands is really AI safe in this day and age.
Creators, they have a unique advantage because they have built an audience and they can now leverage that to launch their own companies. And it basically allows them to put free eyeballs on their own companies, which traditional companies have to pay millions of dollars for. However, once they launch a company, they need to spend time there as well. That means they have less time to actually focus on creating content, which gave them that unique advantage in the first place. So I'm wondering, how do you balance being a creator versus being an entrepreneur?
That was literally my problem. I really struggled to find that balance because exactly like you said, it's a completely different hat to edit content. It's a completely different hat to create, and then another hat to manage, and the numbers, and are we profitable? Are we able to pay our people? Every single different avenue requires a lot of direct attention and energy, and it's really hard to flip-flop from both and do it all. And so it's incredibly hard. I'll just, attest to that. But I think what did help me, and I will say I don't believe I was 100% successful because I did reach burnout. I reached a point where I was ready to walk away from it all because it was just so much. And I think what's important is to not get there, to put the changes in place and get the help that you need before you get to that point. And so I think what I could have done differently is definitely hired better people, spent more time on the hiring process. I think that I would let myself get to a point where it was very urgent to hire, and then I would hire urgently without taking the time, and then I hired the wrong person, and oh shit, now I'm, stuck with this person and I have to pay them, statewide. Like, it's very complicated to now hire and fire someone, and I didn't want to do that anyway. So don't get in that position. Hire very slowly, but intentionally. Don't hire people because they want a chance taken on them. And that sounds very harsh, but I did do that, where I had people come up to me and say, I've been let go, like I need an opportunity, like I'd love to work with you. And I didn't do enough background check, and not like, their background in, crime or anything, but like their professional background. Are they the right fit? I just didn't know how to hire the right person. And so that caused even more issues down the road. So hiring was very important. I did it wrong, but I think if you do it right, it can make a literally night and day difference to your operations and your capacity for work, and also your creative capacity, which is what we really need to sustain as creators.
Yeah, I love that. And are there any other creator entrepreneurs or creators in general that you take inspiration from?
The bat, Vivian too, your rich BFF. She's a good friend of mine now, which is crazy because I used to follow her beforehand, and now I have her phone number and we text. But she's somebody that I just am in awe of. I moderated her book tour recently, and so I got to meet her team, and I remember looking at her team and I'm like, wow, you did it. Like, you hired the excellent team and you still own it 100%, and you can control everything. And I think that is the dream. Acquisition is great if that's your goal, but there's a beauty to owning 100% and then, building it out yourself. And so if you can hire the right people, you can be just like Vivian and have a full-scale operation and do all the things and make millions of dollars.
Yeah, I love that. A final question on my end. What would be your number one piece of advice for creators who want to start and build and scale a company in the same way that you have?
Ooh, this is the hardest question. I think my biggest piece of advice is to not be afraid to recreate something that's already been done. I think some creators see something that's already been done and they think, the opportunity's gone, I'm not going to do it. And I have a follow-up to that as well. But where I'm getting at is there's room for all of us to exist, especially with similar concepts. Like, there's DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Postmates. They all do the same thing, and everybody has their personal favorite for whatever reason, and that's the one that they all go to. You can be that version of the same kind of content for different people. People want to relate to the people that they're hearing their content from. So you can say the same thing as somebody else, but it might resonate to some person more than another person, and that's the person you want to get to. All of that to say, don't be afraid to recreate the wheel. But my follow-up to that is, if you want to try to emulate the success of a channel like Salary Transparent Street, try to think of what's not been done yet. Like, don't be afraid to do something that has, but what has not been done yet and what is missing is where that huge impact and that rocket ship rise, really that opportunity is. So just brainstorm that. What hasn't been done yet and what do people need? Don't think about the viral moment. Think, how will this impact people? What do they take from this? And will they be thinking about it a week from now? If they are, you've got something good.
Yeah, I love that advice. To end, where can people find you?
You can find me at That Money Street Girl on Instagram and Hannah Williams on TikTok, and then Salary Transparent Street on all channels.
Perfect. Hannah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Start VC podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating or review. It really helps us grow. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at hotstart.vc for more breakdowns on how celebrities and creators build billion-dollar brands. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.